1. As anyone has been to one of the co-costs warehouses knows, all receipts are to be checked for accuracy at the exit. I'm looking to ensure items that may have been left in the cart. TP, PT, water, pop, Dysons, etc. were rung in, bottom of the buggy, Bob. And for double scans, happens more often than you think. To me, the bigger sin is a double scan. Now, the past few weeks, we at Member Service had been advised to keep the line moving, which to us MS people meant bob and go, with a little extra attention to the self-checkout receipts. When we catch an error, we will normally send them to the returns desk, which is less than 20 feet away, unless returns is lined up more than 2 members deep, at which point we will call front end for a door audit. Well, one day during the week prior to Christmas, I caught a cashier double scan mistake. Returns was 4 people deep, so called for an audit. By the time the front end soup got to the door, returns was down to 1 person waiting. After taking care of the member, the soup proceeded to give me a tongue lashing about wasting her time. The member should have been sent to returns. Yeah, well, she would still be waiting because the person still at returns was there when I called.
Just give the cashier receipts a look, but be careful about SEO.
Note, if one exit backs up, the soups have to come give us a hand. 2, by corporate policy, all items in a self-checkout cart need to be counted. Cue malicious compliance. Cashier receipt, only looking for double scans because the member should not suffer. Self-checkout receipt, I am counting everything. Not even 5 minutes later, the same sub is back to help me clear the line. Repeat multiple times over the next half hour.
You're usually better and faster than this.
Yeah, just following your instructions.
Huh?
Let cashier receipts go. Counting SEO. Not my fault you let members through SEO with 56 items. 2. When I was 18, I got my first real job, doing oil well testing in northern British Columbia. I also got my first workplace bully. This story is about my 2-time petty vengeance on this asshole. My bully Nick was just plain mean to me. He was the lead hand on our 2-man crew and loved targeting me for abuse. I was young, kind of a nerd, and an easy target, he thought. Nick and I worked night shift together, and it was always an unpleasant experience for me. Initially, he would just do shitty things like stay in the office trailer, sleeping or watching movies, while I did all the outdoor work, only waking to type up our daily report in email, make me stay out for hours in -40°C conditions, when there was no work to be done. This progressed to insults and juvenile name-calling, and finally escalated to some physical violence. One time, when we're having breakfast, he opened up a coffee creamer before throwing it in my face. The next incident, he kicked me in the nuts while we and some other crews were in the bar on the night off. I complained to the office about the physical assaults, but my overall boss didn't take me seriously.
Nick said you hit him first. I don't know who to believe,
was his response. It all came to a head one day when we were driving from our hotel to our work site. As I hopped in the truck to go to work, I noticed Nick's lunch bag on the ground of the passenger side where I was going to sit. I moved his lunch bag as I climbed into the vehicle. Nick then grabbed his lunch kit and tossed it back at my feet, screaming at me to never touch my fucking stuff. Taken completely aback by his shouting, I stayed quiet. When we were about 10 kilometers down the road, I nonchalantly rolled down my window before hurling his lunch bag out the window onto the highway. Nick was immediately irate by what I had done. He slammed on the brakes, stopping the truck on the side of the highway, shouting threats and screaming at me to get the fuck out of his truck. He proceeded to get out and make his way to the passenger side, clearly intent on harming me. I wasn't having it. So I simply locked him out of his own vehicle. Red in the face, screaming obscenities and realizing he was now locked out, I started to laugh before shimmying my way over to the driver's seat and turning around, heading back to the hotel. I left Nick on the side of the highway to hike back to town. PettyRevenge number 1 successful. I called up my boss on the way back, let him know what went down, and told him I quit if he wouldn't move me to another crew. He agreed, eventually telling Nick and I to stay away from each other. informing us we'd both be fired if we had another incident. Fine by me, I was just happy to be employed and rid of him. A few weeks later, myself and my new coworker were heading back to town from site. We pulled up to the hotel and I got out, grabbing the trash bags we'd hauled back from our work to dispose of. Making my way to the dumpster with 2 bags in hand, I noticed Nick's truck was parked in the lot. So instead of using the dumpster, I hucked the trash bags into the box of his truck. Foreseeing what would happen, I chuckled before returning to my hotel room. Now, northern British Columbia has these enormous crows everywhere, and they get into everything they can. They're relentless. Just like seagulls, and our hotels seem to have an abundance of them. As expected, a murder of crows eventually descend onto his truck, ripping open the bags of trash and spreading it all over the box of his truck. They also landed everywhere on his vehicle, covering it with shit and scratches. I got to watch all the carnage from my hotel room. I also got to witness Nick discovering this horde of crows, making a mess out of his precious F-250. Laughing, I watched him clean up the mess. I ended up leaving that job and never faced any backlash for my weaponization of the local fauna. 3. Background. I work in the garage industry as a driver and trainer. I love my job and really had no complaints about the workplace or co-workers, as I spent most of my work hours in a truck by myself, and only interact with people maybe 15 minutes a day. However, there are some 30-plus-year garbage veterans who, for some odd reason, complain about everything: co-workers, trucks, bosses, customers, you name it. They also don't like new hires or young guys like me. There's been one specific old guy who's been harassing me since I was hired, Ted. Mostly little comments here and there, nothing that I can't brush off my shoulder and ignore. For example, I was training a young woman and Ted remarks very cheekily in passing,
I hope they learn something today.
So about 3 weeks ago, I finished my route and come back to the yard, where we park our trucks and give them a daily inspection before going home. We do this inspection twice daily, in the morning when we start, and the evening when we're done. I happened to be driving a spare truck that day and was in the yard before Ted. I leave my driver door open for a few minutes by accident, and as I was finishing my inspection, Ted arrived and was trying to park. I noticed my door and quickly run to close it so it's easier for him to park. I think nothing of it and go to retrieve my things out of the spare. And here comes Ted with a big smirk on his face yelling,
"And to let you fucking train people."
I turned to him and asked, "What's your problem, dude?" I should have ignored him, but whatever. He proceeded to bash on me, leaving my door open, insulted my training and my trainees, then called me brainless. This did not sit well with me. I reported this incident to my boss, but felt I needed to teach him a lesson myself. I can take little jabs here and there, but when you insult me to my face, now we have issues. The trucks we drive are fueled by compressed natural gas, CNG, same stuff your gas stove uses. There are 2 different fuel ports you can plug into your fuel truck at the end of the day. We use the side port, which is covered by a door, but there is also an optional port on the front of the truck that is only covered by a small cap. If either the side door or the front cap is open or popped off, the truck will not start, no matter how much you try. So, I figured I would give Ted a test. 2 weeks later, at the end of the day, I popped off the front cap of Ted's truck. I knew for sure that Ted didn't even know there was a separate fuel port, and if he did, his ego was too big to even check it. I was right. The next morning, I play it cool. We do our morning meeting. Everybody walks out to their trucks and starts them up to begin our morning inspections, everybody except for Ted. I watched as Ted tried to start his truck for 15 minutes. He turns the key. Nothing. He walks out to the side door to make sure he closed it. He did. Why isn't his truck starting? The joy that I felt as I watched him call maintenance, wait for them to walk up and point out the obviously popped-out front cap. It was great. 4. I work in a small startup company of around 12 people. It's a very good atmosphere in the office, and everyone pulls their weight and is super motivated. However, our boss likes to micromanage us, even though he has no expertise in any of our fields, marketing, design, accounting, and so on. Especially as in marketing and design suffer a lot from that, since he will make changes to our strategies and posts, websites, sometimes without telling us, and then gets upset at us when the customer feedback is bad and we aren't reaching our predicted goals. So recently he told us that the reason he thinks we aren't seeing enough results is because we are manipulating our hours and not actually putting in the work we should. Until then, we each wrote down our hours manually in an Excel sheet, but with the new time tracking tool. He would see how long we were working down to the minute. We also could only log into our desk PCs and previously approved home office devices, but not mobile, because if you are not at your desk, it is not work. After our initial shock passed and our boss left for the day, our manager called for a meeting and we came up with a plan. We would do as he says, in the most just following the rules way possible. 1, we would not engage in work-related conversations with him unless we are sitting at our desks and are clocked in. 2, any questions by him, which are asked after we are clocked out, will only be answered once we clock in again the following day. 3, every phone call, text message, or otherwise work-related thing outside of the office would only be answered once there was an option for us to clock in, either next day in office or, for some of us, on our home office device. 4, since we no longer have the option to shift time manually, all work minutes and hours would be clocked exactly when they took place. Side note, in my country, weekends pay better, Sundays have to be paid double, and working after 8 p.m. warrants additional financial benefits by law. Previously, if we needed to post something real quick or had a question, we would just add the weekend hours or late time to the upcoming Monday, basically out of goodwill, but no more of that. 5, we would stop any independent activity, like posting on social media or writing an email, and would send him everything to approve before following through. After about a week, our boss was so fed up with this, he gave us the option to clock in from our mobile devices so he could get a more immediate response to his questions. However, this, of course, led us to clocking in way more frequently, since, as I said, he likes to micromanage, and is therefore asking a lot of questions. I'm happy to report that as of 2024, we have abolished the system again and regained most of our independence. And even though our boss is still pissed about how we exploited the system, it brought the team closer together and, hopefully, taught him a lesson. 5. My story begins working for a financial institution, heaps of overworking and abuse. And we were contractors from a company in Brazil. We worked 12-plus hour daily easily, as we had to deploy stuff at midnight, as it was a critical app. I was online all the time. I took all the heavy fire from the client who dealt directly with me. I had a manager who did nothing and despised me because the team loved me. She didn't know the teammates' names and things like this. We were the only team to have a planned on-duty schedule set up the month before, and everyone relied on us, client side and contractor company side. I was the only one the client had the cell phone number of, and they never complained. This Mangelmanter loved to give everyone's phones to the client so he could call all devs non-stop Saturdays, Sundays, moon or sun in the sky. I put my foot down for the first time with this. The second she tried to send a 2-month girl intern to work with all the men from another contractor company. You could imagine how workplace abuse would be dealt with alone. Now, I know there's a lot of amazing people in the world, but I wouldn't put my hand in the fire for the tech community. Sorry. This was the second time I've put my foot down. We had an altercation in a call with the client, because I had directly said the intern productivity would plummet, having to work with a strange team and under rules that are not our company's. And this could even lead to a lawsuit. She was pissed. We hung up. She calls me alone 0.2 seconds later and scolds me, asking how do I think questioning her would be perceived. Now, I'm a scrum master. The only thing I do is conduct meetings and defuse bombs. So I thought she could use the neuron I freely gave her with my explanation, and I answered, hushing these serious decisions in front of the client said more about her incompetence than to discuss them with me in front of him. I think I heard a vein pop in her head. She hung up. Now it gets good. 30 minutes pass, and I receive an email stating I was on HR watch for misconduct and insubordination. I was required to take one mentoring session weekly during 1 month, filling up an Excel throughout the week with everything I did and recounting in these sessions to see where I could improve. The thing is, she saw the dumpster fire the project was and just got accepted to switch projects and clients, so she was going to walk away next week or so, and my new manager would be a flower of a person who had nothing to do with this. I called HR and told them I would like to request her as my personal mentor, as she was the one who pointed so many improvement feedbacks to better my performance, and was an example for me of what not to do, but I left this part out. They thought this was an amazing idea. The sessions had her and the HR worker responsible for the case, so she had to put on a mentoring face, and lo and behold, I turned into Casper Hauser. During those sessions, I asked everything. I would fill the Excel to the brim with everything I did, including emails, chat convos, and even screen grabs from my personal phone the client used to message and requested to go through them, so she could approve my company speech. I would link Excel files inside this Excel file, so she had absolutely everything I did. One per row. Those sessions took 2 to 3 hours every Friday, scheduled at 8 a.m. by me. As she would be sure to complain when the team worked until 2 a.m., and I would let them come in late. She would have to rate everything in a drop-down cell, write the week's outcome, and come up with action points for the next week. I couldn't help her with this, as I was there to learn. In the last meeting, I requested her manager be in on the meeting, a woman who filled my manager gaps when I needed it the most, and we had an amazing relationship. She agreed, as in her view this was a successful mentoring case from her employer. I finished the meeting, asked for 2 minutes at the end, and forwarded my 2 weeks, here in Brazili's form, written by hand, with all the points that made me quit and receipts, including a part of the fight in front of the client I was able to record with my phone when I saw things going south. I still think about her. So this is a sad thing, but I now have an amazing job at a big tech firm and vow to never be like her. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 327. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, hit the like button. To get early access to the video, subscribe through my Patreon, which is linked in the description. Click Show More, hit Patreon, it'll take you right to it. You'll also find a link there to the Hellfreezer merchandise store. We'll be updating designs between now and February. Don't know what I'm adding, but I'm adding at least 1 or 2 new things. I'll let you know when they're up. And if you enjoyed the video, why not leave a tip? You don't have to, but click that little heart. But if you want to, you can click that little heart with a $sign in it, and every penny and cent helps. Okay, there's no other business today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And this one comes thanks to my moderator, Shigar. Is a sheet considered a blanket? And that's, well, I think it's one of those questions where a blanket is definitely a type of sheet, but a sheet is not always a blanket. That's, of course, if you're only talking about bedding. There's different kinds of sheets. There's sheets of toilet paper. There's sheets of snow. There's sheets of sheep. Well, maybe if you have little drawings of sheep on them. Maybe. Anyway, ignore me. Ignore me. Why don't you let me know what you think in a comment below. And before I go, I'd just like to, might be a bit late with this, but this is the first video I'm recording of the new year. Don't know when it'll go up, but it's the first video. And I hope you all had a good, peaceful new year, with not too much excitement, or if there was, that everyone got home safely. And with that, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.